Blog Talk Radio.
Hi everyone, this is Camille from sunny California, and you're listening to the Coffee Chat with Camille show, which is a podcast series that interviews various guests about real-life topics for people who love to learn. Hi everyone, this is your host Camille. We have a great episode on Coffee Chat with me, Camille. The title is Genuine Love in the Animal Kingdom with Rebecca Coffey. Rebecca Coffey is a science journalist with broad national recognition. She contributes 5 features a month to Forbes.com, where she addresses evolution, science, health, and behavior. She's written regularly for Scientific American and Discover magazines, PsychologyToday.com, and Vermont Public Radio, where she was a frequent on-air contributor for almost a decade. And she also contributes science-informed op-eds to newspapers like the New York Daily News, the Chicago Tribune, the Seattle Times, and to many radio and internet outlets. Coffey is also a humorist, McSweeney's Internet Tendency. I think it's a defenestration, the rumpus, a host of lit websites, and a book of literary humor, and a novelist, the highly praised serial comic hysterical, and Anna Freud's Story. Kirkus Reviews has likened Coffey to journalist and humorist Mary Roach. Okay, and so we're going to go ahead and get into our magnificent interview with Rebecca Coffey. Hi.
Hi, Camille. How are you?
Hi. I'm wonderful. Welcome. So happy to have you here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get into the interview. Thank you again for being our guest. Humans and animals share some nonverbal come hither gestures and expressions. What are they and how do they serve the survivor of species?
All right. So, as Charles Darwin said, we are all, and by all I mean plants and animals include humans, biologically programmed on a level that is not inside of our awareness to send our gametes into the next generation. Gametes means reproductive material. So we all have mating gestures. Humans and primates share quite a few of them. For example, there is a way that young women nod their heads down and put a hand back and bat their eyes, look back up and bat their eyes. Well, flirtatious young women are not the only ones to do that. Primates do that. But not only primates. Mud turtles do that. Albatross do that. There seems to be a biological fundamental signal that says, I'm kind of interested in you.
Great, that's great.
Now,
do animals... Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Well, one of my favorite questions is whether animals can feel love, because they can certainly feel an urge to mate. Charles Darwin thought they could. He thought that even insects, crickets, communicate love by rubbing their feet together and making noise. Most scientists these days would call that hogwash. They would just say, he was an early scientist. He wasn't quite careful on that matter. But not every scientist would disagree. Jane Goodall has said things reminiscent of that. So has Franz de Waal. So there is an open question of whether animals can feel love, romantic love. Now, I don't think it's a stretch to imagine that mothers feel maternal love, and some fathers as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And do animals know mother love? And if they do, does it make a difference in their ability to survive and procreate?
Well, it actually does make a difference. Researchers have found that males who had been orphaned after weaning but before age 12, when they were adults, they sired considerably fewer children. Orphaned males in primate groups are unable to maintain their alpha status for as long as males who were raised by their mothers. On average, they have their first offspring about 3 years later. And orphaned males, these are chimps actually, orphaned males fathered about half as many offspring per mating, and their offspring were less likely to survive.
Oh. Okay. And then male brown spiders seem to prefer to die after having sex. And male Malabar spiders not only irreversibly damage both of their sex organs, which is their equivalents, I can't say it here, during sex, they then make themselves readily available as meals to their mates. How did these spiders' preferences serve their evolutionary interest?
Well, let's talk about the topic of sperm competition. Sperm is a word that we can actually say, though it doesn't make it through email filters if you put it in a subject heading. So Darwin said that there are two kinds of drivers of evolution. One is natural selection. Whatever can adapt better to changing environmental pressures survives those changes. And the genes of that organism tend to dominate its species gene pool. That's natural selection. Sexual selection happens for animals and some plants that reproduce sexually. How do you get chosen to be a mate? So peacocks, male peacocks sprout beautiful feathers, stags sprout antlers, bowerbirds build bowers, but there's an aspect to sexual selection that Darwin didn't know about because it happens on the microbiological level, and he wasn't a microbiologist. What he never realized was that it's not just getting the possibility to mate that helps a male transfer gametes into the next generation. It's making sure that its sperm, his sperm, are the ones to fertilize her eggs, because not all females are monogamous in any given mating system. So the Malabar spider has an interesting way to help that happen. First, some of the microbiological ways are that sperm swim faster, or they're stronger, or they're bigger. So there's something built in. But with the Malabar spider, the male's sex organs come out of its head. And it approaches the female on the web, and inserts one sex organ into one of her receptacles. But so you would think the matter is done, right? Well, the problem is she has two receptacles. Fortunately, he has two sex organs. So he inserts his sex organ into her receptacle, but then he severs it. He leaves it in there, and when it's in there, it continues to ejaculate. He steps back, ready to defend her, to fight away any other males that come. If another male comes, you would think he would just gather his energy and fight like crazy. But instead, he does a very bizarre thing. He devours his other sex organ on the spot. He eats the thing. So now he has no sex organs, and you would think he would be very weak from losing two appendages. Well, scientists check that out. What is the survival benefit of eating your sex organ when you need to be defending your female? And they did a staged fight between what they called eunuchs, spiders with no sex organs left, and spiders with one sex organ. And they also staged battles between spiders with no sex organs left and virgin male spiders. Consistently, eunuchs fought longer and harder. Now, so the name of their paper was "Eunuchs Are Better Fighters." So, to answer your question about why would you allow yourself to be eaten, why do male brown spiders allow themselves to be eaten? Well, why do Malabars allow themselves to be eaten? So you're not just fertilizing one egg, you're fertilizing an egg whole bunch of eggs. Maybe dozens, maybe hundreds, depending on the species. You allow yourself to be eaten, possibly, because you become food to help the female nourish the eggs that you just fertilized. So it's all about sending your gametes into the next generation.
Okay, that's excellent. And then from his work studying evolution, at the time of his marriage, Charles Darwin knew more about the dangers of crossbreeding than almost any person alive. Yet his own marriage may have not been his wisest life choice, genetically speaking. It put his children in grave danger. How and why? How and why then did he marry? Okay, so why did he marry? And then what was great about his marriage anyway?
So Charles Darwin was a 19th century scientist. He had just spent 5 years on a boat traveling all around, mostly South America, gathering specimens. But he had, aside from occasional visits to court and possibly brothels, he had not been in the company of a woman for 5 years. He hated his nose. He was an aristocrat. He had plenty of money. He hated his nose. So here this man, young man with few social skills and a nose he hated, arrives back in England, and he needs to talk to people, and he needs to, get to know people, and he starts visiting his cousin Emma. Now, they would have fireside chats pretty regularly, and the problem is back then, you couldn't have regular chats with a young woman without proposing. Now, he knew about the dangers of crossbreeding because he'd been doing experiments with plants. And he had also noticed that by and large, animals avoid mating with the close relatives. In primate communities, either the young man or the young woman, upon puberty, leave the group and go out and find another group to live with. Sometimes both do. He could tell it was really important not to marry or mate with a close family member. But there he was having regular chats with Emma. And Emma was 30. That was pretty late back in 1839, right? She was becoming an old maid. Even though she was a reasonably attractive girl, she was intelligent, she was an excellent pianist, having studied with Chopin. And so he sat down one day and drew up a list, two lists. One was called Marry, and one was called Not Marry. And he was trying to decide what to do. And on the marry list, the benefits were female chit-chat. He liked that. On the not marry list, he would have to put up with visits from relatives. He didn't want to do that. He would probably have to take a walk every day with it. He didn't want to do that. But somehow, and the lists were about equally long, he worked up his nerve and he asked Emma to marry him. And Emma, shocked with all get out, agreed. She was 30. She needed to do something. In fact, it was an extraordinarily successful marriage. They loved each other dearly. And she had to nurse him through a lot of sickness because when he was traveling around South America, he got a tick-borne disease and he was desperately ill for much of the rest of his life. But they had 10 children, and 3 of them died young. Now, back in the mid-1800s, in aristocratic families, plenty of money. Their mutual grandfather was Josiah Wedgwood, who had designed all of that beautifully painted china and porcelain that was all the rage throughout Europe. They had plenty of money. Even so, even though they could afford doctors, losing 3 young children out of a group of 10 may have been pretty average. I don't know. The records aren't really there. Nobody was doing census data like that. But Charles and Emma blamed themselves. And for the rest of their lives, they thought of the remaining 7 children as frail. And they kicked themselves for having gotten married in the first place. So, as I said, it was an extraordinarily successful marriage. He got all the female chit-chat he wanted. He got the walks every day that he feared, but they did walk every day. Charles was the worst at spelling of almost any man on the face of the earth at the time, and Emma was his editor. Emma was a very devout Anglican, and at the time, the Anglican Church had the biblical view of creation, that God called it all into being in roughly the same condition that we see it now. So Darwin's ideas about evolution were heretical, and some people wonder if that was a problem for her. But in fact, it didn't seem to be a problem at all. She was of his mind, scientifically and emotionally.
Wow, that's a great story or part of history. And then why is monogamy among animals so rare? And is it also rare among humans?
Monogamy among animals is rare, probably because when a species is at all endangered by lack of food or not even a species necessarily, but a community, by lack of food or by an increase in predators, it becomes smaller. And so if you are a monogamous species, you are likely to be permanently mated to a close relative, which puts all of your children at risk and hastens the collapse of the community. So the benefit there to polygamy is that at least some of your children will be healthy. Now, in human communities, we claim, most of us, certainly in the Western world, claim to be largely monogamous or serially monogamous. The fact of the matter is, we cheat. First of all, about 85% of human societies have allowed polygamy. That's a form of polygamy in which the woman has to stay loyal, but the men have more than one spouse. That's very expensive for the man. He's got to support more than one family. So only rich men are genuinely able to have more than one spouse and family. And it's not a very good solution for society. According to crime data gathered in the United Kingdom, unmarried men between the ages of 24 and 35 are about 3 times more likely than married ones to murder another man. In general, they wreak more violence and are also more prone to suicide. So monogamy has a peacekeeping function in human society. But, as I said, among animals, it's not so great. According to 30 years of survey data of 41 animal species in West Africa, it's the second strongest factor driving species into extinction.
Okay, thank you so very, very much. This has been a magnificent science episode, I call it, or science. It's just wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Rebecca Coffey. And I'm going to go ahead and say bye for now.
Can I give a little plug for my book? It's called
Beyond, yes, absolutely.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Called
Yes.
Beyond Primates. Beyond Primates, new essays on Darwin and evolution, and it's available. It's probably not in all bookstores, but it's certainly available on Amazon.com. Beyond
It's
Primates.
on Amazon.
Rebecca
Beyond
Coffey.
Primates?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see it in the notes. Okay. All right, thank you so much. Okay, and then I will put it in the description. Yes, thank you so much.
Excellent.
Bye, Rebecca.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, everyone, that was the magnificent, world-renowned science journalist, evolutionary psychologist, and humorist, and novelist, Rebecca Coffey. And then I will look up her book and then put it in our show description before I transfer this episode over to my website. So you can find a copy of the episode today with Miss Rebecca Coffey at coffeechatwithcamille.com. Okay, and then it should also be able to be listened to on any streaming platform. Okay, so where they stream music, I'm there. And the number one streaming is Apple. Second is Spotify. Okay? At any rate, thank you all so much for listening to this magnificent episode on genuine love in the animal kingdom with Rebecca Coffey. It was a very impactful, I think, and oh boy, just filled with gems episode. Okay? I'm sure my mom's going to love it since she actually worked at Caltech, California Institute of Technology, for 22 years. Okay? So she was a member of the science community big time. All right. Bye for now, everyone.